Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3. You want to know what's hard? Doing a backflip out of disco. You want to know what's hard? Going anywhere near hip hop. You want to know what's really, really hard? Trying to kill a man named Chance Rudeau. My name is Zoe. It's spelled Z-O-Z to the O for those of you outside of the U.S. It's the 143rd episode of Backlit Cinema, the podcast, where we take a look back at the movies of yesteryear from the latter half of the last millennium. If you like what you're about to hear, then please tell your family, tell your friends, and tell that man whose mama took a chance about Backlit Cinema, the podcast. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to announce that I have a very special guest. Once again, a man from the industry, a man who knows what it means to write a script, a man who knows what it means to be behind the camera, a man who knows what it means to have to desperately seek out financing for projects that he knows will be something that audiences will enjoy all over the country. You can find him on Facebook. You can find him at his own website. You can see the type of work that this man is capable of. Ladies and gentlemen, I have for you the writer, director, and producer who is well esteemed and on the rise in Hollywood. Ladies and gentlemen, I have for you Jayson Johnson.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I feel so good about myself now.
Yeah, I aim to please, and I once again I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and it's a pleasure having an artist in the studio, especially someone who is has a similar background and some of the same struggles that I might have had in my own life. So someone who knows what it means when I say, "Hey, brother, you coming to the cookout?"
Yeah. Absolutely.
But man, I think you are the first no, you're not the first African American person who is a creator to come on the show, but you are the first male producer, the first male director, and the first African American male writer that I've had, or a screenwriter that I've had on the show. So that's totally awesome. At least you're the first one who's admitted to it.
Yeah. And I'll be at every cookout too. So
yeah, absolutely. So I'm pleased to have you on. I really want to ask you a bunch of questions. I don't want to hold you for too long, but the curiosity is killing me, so to speak. So I want to know your perspective on certain things. So, for example, I've had discussions with other people who talk about movies and whatnot. We're always talking about like the role of a screenwriter, the role of a director, the role of a producer, and a lot of times those roles are kind of muddled together and kind of mixed up. You never really know what the separate parts are doing. Sometimes it's all the same person, and sometimes there are three very separate and distinct parts, and a lot of the time these roles are blurred together. So as a producer, because I know that you're kind of like a freelance producer, so as a producer, what do you see your role is? So like say a director or maybe a screenwriter, maybe another producer comes to you with a project. What do you see your role as a producer?
So yeah, that's a great question. So when another like producer comes to me or a director comes to me, they are looking for me as a producer to help them along with their project. So that may be managing their project with the assets that they already have. So let's say they have $100,000 and they want to make this film, and they come to me and say, "Hey Jay, we need a producer on this project." So I would be probably what's called a line producer. I would get a certain budget, and then with that budget, I would hire people that are below the line. So that would be some talent, some crew and, find locations, etc., and essentially make that project move forward so that everything can kind of come to fruition.
Awesome, awesome. So you are thought of sometimes as a Christian filmmaker, and the movie that we're about to talk about is called Hard Target, and I would submit it's not a very Christian movie. So not very Christian of you,
Yeah.
Jayson.
Mm.
So so I have to ask, would you do a movie like I've seen some of your work. It doesn't lend itself to the type of action, thrilling, or stunt heavy film that Hard Target is. But do you see yourself doing a movie like Hard Target or Hard Boiled or I don't know, Double Impact, something like that?
I would love to do that. Although I'm a Christian filmmaker, I think I've done maybe one Christian film. So um, I think for me as a Christian, I know where my values are and, kind of what I want to put out there. But, I think a filmmaker can be a Christian and still make, secular films. So I think it's just where your heart lies and then, what you do with your life, because you want to radiate that God is within you, and then go ahead and do what your heart desires as far as like things that you're interested in.
Right, right. And I think I remember you describing how there are some movies that are labeled as Christian films and how it seems kind of like the type of movies tend to be obvious or cliche or predictable or something like that. So in the movie, I think the film you're talking about is Bloodlines. Is that right?
Yes, that was a film.
Yeah. Okay.
I actually did that in Bible college.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
yeah.
So how was that received in Bible college?
It was interesting because I wanted to kind of push the barriers of as far as what you consider to be like a Christian film. So there's someone getting shot in there, heroin use and all this stuff. And when the professors heard about it, they were just like, "Oh, are you doing something along the lines of our values?" And I was just like, "Yeah. Everything's gonna be okay." so so yeah, so I think for me, I want to try and do something realistic, something that's honest, something that's true. So, when I did Bloodline, I wanted to make sure that, it wasn't something that someone was just like, Christian film, see it like 10 miles away. So that was kind of like one of the goals that we had on the project.
Yeah, yeah, I feel the same way. I feel like the endings are kind of expected, or they might be hackneyed, or just predictable. I don't even like using the word predictable, but my thing is like it's not that the movies tend to be predictable. It's like the path to getting there is not interesting, because it's like the way I think about predictability in the movies is that we go there to see a story. We already kind of know how the story is going to end or how it's going to end up. And that's how, and when you tell a particular type of stories, sometimes a director will flip the expectations in order to surprise the audience, because he knows what the audience expected and he wants to change the expectation for it. But at the same time, it should be noted that since we know how this story is going to end, it's the journey to getting there. It's just like if somebody tells you the time that they almost died. And if somebody has almost died, then obviously they survived the encounter. So the story is not how they almost die. Well, the story is not whether or not they're going to live or die. We already know they live because they're in front of us telling us about it. The story is how they survived the encounter, and that's and how that story is told. That's what makes the story interesting.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, I'm kind of blathering over here.
No, it's all good. It's all good, bro.
So the other question I wanted to ask, you mentioned that financing, and I've heard other filmmakers say that financing is one of the toughest things that you run into when you're producing your own projects. What is like the second toughest thing that you have to deal with?
Um, that's a good question. I think the second thing that's toughest to deal with is I think when you have an actor on set that doesn't quite align up to your vision and you hire them and now you're just like, oh man, now I'm stuck with this actor that is difficult. And I'm sure you heard of horror stories. Like I was just watching something about Wesley Snipes in Blade 3, where all communication broke down, and he was just like, I'm only going to communicate with the director through post-it notes. And so
Right,
luckily I
right,
haven't had like an encounter like that, but I have had some difficult talent to work with. So it's kind of like a compromise of, each person's ego and a careful navigation to get the best out of that talent, to get the best out of production, and to move things forward. So that's certainly
right.
difficult.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, I've encountered a lot of stories, especially doing research for movies, doing this show. There are a lot of stuff. So, and I was just reading an article earlier today about a number of actors that had differing opinions about how a story should be told, because it seems that once you bring on the talent, once you bring on the actors, once you bring on like maybe a second unit director, or maybe some kind of co-director or whatever, once you bring on other people to the story to try to tell your story, it's not necessarily yours anymore. Now you've got people who have different opinions about how the story should be told, and then they'll ask for changes. So one of the things I had just read was Lena Headley, and I think it was the sixth season of the Game of Thrones. They wanted her to walk down the street naked, and she didn't want to do that. So they they got a body double to do that scene.
Mm.
There's a couple of long running sitcoms. I think one was on Friends, and one was on, I think it was the I think it was the U.S. version of The Office. And so on those shows, they have very well defined and developed romances. And the story writers, they wanted to have a story where the guy cheats on the girl in both instances, and they didn't want to do it. Like the actor didn't want to do it, so they changed the script because the actor kind of refused to shoot the scene. Because they're, I guess, like in a sitcom, in a sitcom it's kind of different because they've been playing that character for like 6 or 7 years,
Mm-hmm.
and so they they feel like the audience would like absolutely hate them if they go on and did a story where the one of the partners cheated on whoever. So stuff like that I've heard. And then famously you have Bill Murray, who's just well, it he's famously difficult because he doesn't necessarily like to stick to the script, but it was a type of thing where it damaged his relationship with Harold Ramis, where they couldn't work together. I think it was after Groundhog's Day. They couldn't work together. They didn't really talk to each other for decades. And I don't know if they ever really got to talk to each other before Ramis eventually passed away. But yeah, actors can't, you basically have to treat actors with human beings with brains. They're just not speaker boxes, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, and they're hypersensitive about stuff. I can say this, and I hope this actor doesn't get too upset that I said this, but it did happen. So I made a film called Thought, and a lot of people may know what that means. So
Yeah.
to those that may not know, I don't know how PG friendly your show is, so I'm not going to say it. But
No, we say all the curse words on the
oh, you
show.
do?
It's
Okay,
it's expletive,
yeah,
so
okay,
let them fly.
okay. So thought means that hole over there, and I had it as an acronym, on the script and on everything. But for the movie poster, I was just like, well, we may have to spell it out because some people may not know what it is. So I sent a preview to the actress. She didn't look at it to preview it. I didn't hear back from her, so I ran it. And then when it was on social media, oh my God, she had the connection of a lifetime. I'm not a hoe.
Right,
And I was just like, but I sent it to you. And
right.
so I couldn't live for like 3 days. So it was just like, yeah, you have to be careful, and it's just like double check if you got to. So I definitely learned that.
What I don't understand is why she would think that she's calling you a hoe, because she's an actor. So as an actor, she knows that she's playing a character. She knows that that character isn't her, and so I think that could be a problem.
Yeah, yeah. I try to explain this is a movie character, but sometimes you get a little bit too close to the heart, and then maybe something else comes out. So it's just like maybe I dug up or something, So I don't know. So, but
Right,
yeah,
right. Maybe she was doing the method.
yeah. I ain't gonna say nothing. uh,
All right, all right, all right. So, you talked about like one of your goals is to, make a big Hollywood movie, be an Oscar award winning director. So when you say Oscar award winning, are you meaning Oscar award winning director or writer or producer? Which of these Oscars are you most like to have? What's the one that is that you most like? That's the most prestigious to you?
honestly, I'll take them how I can get them. But I would love to have a. I'd love to have a best picture. That would be. I think every
Yeah.
director wants that. Um, but
Right, right,
but
right.
yeah, I'll take them however I can get them. So if it's
Right,
best
right, right.
sound with special effects, I'm not going to discriminate. I'll take it.
Right, right, right. So a lot of people on their journey to this type of lifestyle, a lot of people that I talk to, when they basically kind of just make shorts. That's their main avenue to, eventually getting to like a feature film. But so, what are your avenues? So, I suppose that you could do commercials. You could do, well, maybe not music videos so much, but certainly like a comedy special, or I don't know, a political rally, something. There are things out there that that you can use as stepping stones to eventually reach your goals. So, what are the steps have you taken?
So I've made 9 shorts, and they've gotten into 80 festivals, won 6 times for best picture, best actor, things of that nature. Um, and I'm finding that's cool, but that's not the route. I've done music videos, and oh my god, you got to listen to that song like 300 times. So I'm just like, that's not the route. I'm not doing that. So
Right,
um,
right.
so you know, I think it's really who to, showing your work, making good work, meeting those people, getting in front of them with a vision, and then um, hopefully that's it. Because I'm really navigating this the whole way. Because, I didn't grow up in a family that had any connections in the film industry. So it's like, us people, us brothers and sisters, we have to kind of just make our way. You know what I mean? So it's just like
Right.
we gotta get it out. We gotta get it out the mud. So that's what I'm doing, and I know I'm going to be successful. It's just like when. So that's what it comes down
Right,
to.
right. Absolutely. So in your journey, I had the question on the tip of my tongue. It's not a question that I wrote down like most of these other questions, and now it just kind of escaped. It evaporated. I hate it when that happens.
Yeah.
It's what happens when you get old. Okay, I remember it now. I remember you're from Chicagoland. So is that your current base of operations now, or do you see yourself moving to like Los Angeles to try to further your goals?
So yeah, I am from Chicagoland. Represent the West Side. But then I moved out to the Bay Area, and that's where I'm at now. I did go down to LA for about a year. I had a friend that lived down there. He said, "Come on down," and then I went and try to get some film stuff done. But that place is just not for me. I always I would always run into people, because they have like game night, like trivia nights at like some famous producer's house. And it's like someone that they're hooking up with, that they promised a career to, that they'll open their house to, and they can invite all their friends. So I went to one of these industry night things, and I said, "Yeah, I just finished, producing a couple of Bollywood films. There's nothing big or nothing like that. And some guy was like, well, when I worked on Pirates of the Caribbean, and before he could finish, some guy was like, well, when I worked on Terminator 2, and, it was just a big pissing match. And I was just like, oh, I can't even do it. And so it's just
Right.
like that and all the fake meetings that people set up, to make themselves look like they're bigger than they are. I couldn't do it. I came back to the Bay Area and I said, either I'm going to make it here or I'm going to die trying. So that's what I'm going to do.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes you got to make new paths, new inroads in order to uh, do it in a way that doesn't really compromise yourself as a person.
Yeah, you have to. In my book, I either got to be real, I got to be myself, I got to be real, or I just can't do it. So it's just like
Right.
that's what it
Right.
comes down to.
I've also heard that you kind of got to be a little bit delusional. I think that what you're running into is a bunch of people who have taken the delusion just maybe a little too far.
Hmm. Yeah, because I wrote a script and it got accepted into the Burbank National Film Festival, and they invited me down. They said we're going to give you the red carpet treatment and all this stuff. So I said, okay, I'll do it. I don't normally go down to LA that much, but I'll do it this time. So I met a producer that I don't even think he knew what I did. He was just like, "Who are you? What are you here for?" And I said, "I'm Jayson Johnson. I'm a screenwriter, filmmaker, blah blah blah." And he said, "Oh, great! I'm doing a project with Spike Lee and blah blah blah." And I know this guy's pulling smoke up my ass, but I give him my contact information anyway. And then he proceeds to set a meeting. So then I go to the meeting via Zoom, and then he says, "I'm going to be doing, this project with Sylvester Stallone and blah blah blah." And it's like one meeting after a meeting after a meeting. So after like the third time, I said, I can't even do it, bro. It's just like, you got to show me something, and then I'm going to be
Right.
invested in it. But if you're just, showing me that you can set meetings and name dropping, I'm not in it. So yeah,
Right.
so that's pretty
Man,
much my
it
Hollywood experience.
sounds like a rigmarole. And what's also impressive is that you're basically self-taught as a filmmaker. So you hadn't had any formal training. So what was your process? Because let me put it to you this way. I had to go and I had to change out a toilet. So my and I have not been had any formal plumbing training. So what I did was I went to the YouTube and I watched a bunch of YouTube videos and how to change a toilet. So and I was able to change one toilet, but then I tried to change another toilet and it was far beyond my scope. So what was your process in learning how to be a filmmaker?
Honestly, I prayed a lot, I lied a lot, and I watched YouTube a lot. So,
A fellow graduate of the YouTube
yeah.
University.
So whenever someone like I knew I always wanted to do film, but it's just like how do you even get in? So at first I just started making like my own little personal projects, putting them up on Facebook or YouTube, whatever. But when it finally came time to work on a professional project, and they asked you, "Have you done this before?" Oh yeah, I do it. I do it all the time. And you make up a fake resume, and make fake fictitious credits, and that's what I did because that's what I thought you had to do to get in. And so that's what I did, and I landed a producer job, and that's how I started producing. And I didn't know what I was doing. So I would show up on set. I would say, "This is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. What are you doing?" And then they would all scamper. They would all run away. And then I get on YouTube and then watch videos of what the hell to do. And that's how.
So you had to fake it a little bit. You had to fake the funk. This sounds like uh this sounds almost like Hollywood Shuffle or Bamboozled or something like that. This sounds like a movie that needs to be made, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. That's what I did. And to a certain degree, I'm still doing it. I have no idea what I'm
Right,
doing.
right.
But I'm gonna just keep throwing ideas against the wall and, using my passion. And I know it's going to work. So it's worked this long. So why not?
Right, right, right. You just got to keep on doing it. So, um, I really want to ask you, tell us about Strike Five and all of the things that you're engaged in. Why don't you plug the things that you're passionate about at this moment?
Yeah, so Strike Five, I started that in 2011, on January 1st, 2011. And that was like my passing of the Rubicon. I'm either going to make it or I'm going to die on the shore, going after this dream. And Strike Five is all like is paying homage to perseverance. In life, they say you strike out 3 times. But, as an entrepreneur, you have to keep striking, until you get that hit. So that's what Strike Five means. It's just perseverance, keep pushing forward, keep trying. Eventually, it's going to work out. So that's what I do. And I think it's worked out well for me. So as I was saying earlier, we made 9 short films, and we're going to kind of transition into making feature films now. I don't know how we're going to get the money. I don't know how we're going to get the distribution. I don't know where we're going to get any of this stuff, but it's going to happen. Because that's kind of how we've done it this whole time. So, right now we have 3 projects at 3 different price points. The first one is called Counterfeit Cabernet. It's about a wine vintner that loves underground gambling, gets in trouble with the wrong gangster. He says he's going to take out his family, so he's going to make it some counterfeit wine to kind of pay off the tab. The second one is called Roger and Me. It's about a black computer savant that he finds his girlfriend cheating on him. He goes to an all-night hackathon, and while he does great, he falls asleep at the wheel on the way home, crashes into a tropical goldfish store, and the judge makes him carry a GPS-infused goldfish. And the story is about him getting from one point of Richmond to the other point, trying to, tether this goldfish tank. And then the last one is it's called Grip Tape. It's about a skateboard bandit that is an undocumented immigrant, and he lives with his type 2 diabetic daughter in a vehicle. And when her medical benefits get snatched, he goes through any means necessary to kind of try to save his daughter. So those are the 3 projects I have on the horizon. And in the interim, we're making merchandise. So this is one of my hats up here. You can go to Strike Five Films to purchase that. Also, we'll be starting a nonprofit that's going to help teach kids how to learn how to be filmmakers, especially those in the inner city, Black and brown kids, because I didn't have an opportunity, so I want to try and pass that opportunity to them. So I'm going to be fundraising for that, and that's what I got.
Awesome, awesome. It sounds like a lot. It sounds like you're a busy man. You got a lot of what did it say? Oars in the water, pokes in the fire. You got a lot of things
Oh yeah,
going on.
irons in the fire. Yeah,
irons in the fire. That's what it is. I'm mixing up all the metaphors. The one thing I want to ask is where can our audiences find you? If you got social media, websites, or publications, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm on let's see, I'm on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I have my portfolio site. I'm on LinkedIn, and I don't have the rights to strike5films.com yet. I have one of those janky Weebly sites, but you can generally find me if you Google me, Jayson Johnson, and my name is Jayson. You should be able to find all my social media there. Or alternatively, you can just Google Strike Five Films, StrikeFive Films, and you should be able to find me, no problem.
All right, all right. Also, I'll have all of that in the show notes, and I'll have let's see. So if I go to the Strike Five Films website, is that where the merchandise is also?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. I'll make sure that I'll have that that link there because this is a podcast. They weren't able to see the hat that you're showing.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And
Yeah.
right,
No
right.
worries.
So, but I will have the links so that they will be able to see that fetching hat for themselves. So it seems that your image has frozen. I don't know if that's on my end or your end, but the audio is still working, so that's great.
Oh,
so
okay.
don't so don't worry about anything. If the audio, if the image, the image will probably come back, but if the audio freezes, then we'll fix it when we get to that. So, as I said, we'll have all of your links in the show notes. And now I want to get to the movie that we both watched.
So we watched Jean-Claude Van Damme's magnus opus, Hard Target. After spending years away from her father, Natasha Binder goes to visit him at his last known residence, only to find him missing and discovering, to her shock, that he's been living homeless and on the street. With the city police on strike, it's difficult for her to find help. She hires a local and unemployed merchant seaman to help find her father. But what they find is a rich man's fantasy of hunting human beings. What they're about to find out is just why humans make such hard targets.
All right. Well read. I wrote that. As a writer, what do you think of that?
I think it read very well. And usually I'm a guy that stumbles on stuff all the time. So, yeah.
See, here's the thing about writing stuff or doing a podcast or just putting anything out there. I hardly get any feedback. So whenever I get feedback on writing or artwork or whatever, it's good to know where you're good and where you're failing, where you need improvements, So I appreciate that analysis of that writing.
Yeah.
So Hard Target was released August 20th, 1993, produced by Universal Pictures, Alphaville Films, and Renaissance Pictures. It grossed over $32 million in the US and Canada, $74 million worldwide on I can't even talk anymore, on a reported budget of $18 million. Now, at a glance, that might seem pretty good, but when you get to further analysis of it, it didn't really make a profit in the US and Canada, not like the studios are looking for. So what really saved it was that it kind of made it kind of doubled its intake overseas. So it's really the overseas market that really saved this movie because we'll look at where it was adjusted for inflation. So if you adjust it for inflation, you could say that it grossed over $69 million domestically, $160 million worldwide, and $39 million was the reported budget. So looking at it that way, it's almost like saying you made a movie for $40 million and it only grossed maybe $70 million. What you're really looking for is $80 million. Didn't quite hit that. You're looking for $80 million just to break even. Didn't quite hit that. When you look overseas, it made twice that. So I think that's what saved it. But that being said, I liked it. I had very fond memories of this movie, but I had a very interesting viewing of this movie on this rewatch. I don't think I've rewatched it in decades. This may have been only the second time I've rewatched it. How about yourself?
This is actually the first time that I watched this film. And I.
Oh, okay. That's right. You were telling me that.
Yeah. I actually mistake this film for another one of Van Damme's films because I was waiting for there's that meme where he's dancing in the cabin, and I thought that was this film. But yeah, I was surprised by it. So, but
did you find out what that film was?
No, I'm gonna have to look that up probably after this podcast because I didn't have a chance to.
I know. I know that one. I can tell you right now.
Oh, okay.
We did that. It's another one of my favorite movies. And I don't begrudge you for not knowing the difference between Van Damme films because a lot of them kind of repeat themselves and he looks exactly the same in most of them. This particular movie is unique, Hard Target, because he has long hair and in a lot of the movies that he's in, he doesn't have long hair. So this was a very different look for him because he doesn't do that. He's like he needs to look the same in every movie. He's that kind of actor. So the movie that you're where he's like dancing in kind of like a cabana or something like that, that is Kickboxer. So in Kickboxer, he's training to be a kickboxer in order to get revenge on the guy who beat up his brother. Like his brother was in a kickboxing match. He got beat up real bad. He had to be put in a wheelchair. So he has to get revenge. And he's being trained. And his master, well, not his master, his instructor, takes him to a bar, gets him drunk, and then tells the men in the bar about how he's insulting them. So now everybody wants to fight him because of this rumor that his instructor has started. And so they're trying to fight him, but he's beating him up even though he's drunk. And it's in that sequence where he's dancing.
Oh, okay.
So that's a fun movie.
This one was
so
fun.
Anyway,
yeah.
I'm glad you liked it, and because you said you wanted to try something different, and you tried something different, and you enjoyed it. So that was a risk that you took. I'm glad you took it. I'm glad you took the plunge. So tell us about the first guy who starred in this movie. Who's top billing?
So top billing is Jean-Claude Van Damme, and he stars as Chance Bordeaux. And Van Damme has also starred in Double Impact, Double Team, Kickboxer, as you were just saying, episode 27, and Bloodsport, which you did on episode 102.
Yeah, it's funny that I wrote these like this. Obviously, he's been in a bunch of other movies, and he's continued his filming career since those movies. But Double Impact and Double Team, even though they have similar titles, they're very different movies. And I feel like Kickboxer and Bloodsport are practically the same movie, even though the main difference with Bloodsport is it is purported to be based on a true story, and it's not really. It's still a fun movie though.
Yeah.
So next up is Lance Henriksen. He played Emile Fouchon, and he's been in Aliens that we covered in episode 122, and The Quick and the Dead that we covered in episode 81. And he's also in something called Altered Reality. That's one of the last things he's done. I mean, he's still alive and filming, so to say. So that one came out in 2024. I've always been impressed with Lance Henriksen. Is there anything about him? It's like, do you know who he is? Is he familiar in any way?
Yeah, he always seems to be like one of those bad guys that you're just like, I've seen him before, but it's just like you don't really know his name, but he's like that, prototypical baddie that you see in films that and we'll definitely talk a lot about him because I have a lot of notes about him, but. Yeah, I've seen him on a lot of projects.
Right.
The romance interest, although they didn't really have one, that's Yancey Butler, and she plays Natasha Nat Binder, and she was in Kick-Ass, Drop Zone, and Boogeyman.
Right. She hasn't had like a storied career. She doesn't have like a deep IMDb page, but I remember her from a couple of other projects, some TV shows that did not last. So there's one called Witchblade. I didn't watch, but I'm familiar with it because it's a comic book. It's a comic book TV show. And then another one that she did called Man and Machine, where she plays a robot, and she's on the show because at the time Star Trek The Next Generation was really popular, and I think that there were other producers that were trying to jump on that Star Trek bandwagon, and they came up with that show, and it didn't last though. So the next person is Chuck. I did not practice pronunciations this morning. I'm going to go with Parar. Chuck Parar. He played Douglas Binder, and he's also been in Barbed Wire, Red Planet, and Virus. And there's a reason that he's been in some of these movies that we'll get into later. He's going to come up again.
I'm glad that you got that, but then again, I'm going to struggle with this next one. I'm going to say Arnold Vosloo, and he played.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, sounds good to me. Uh, he played Pick Van Cleef, and he was in The Mummy Returns, Forgiveness, and Blood Diamond. Oh yeah, he was in Blood Diamond. How about that? Yeah.
Yeah, I actually don't remember him in Blood Diamond because it's been a while since I watched it, but everybody remembers him from The Mummy and The Mummy Returns. Yeah, we know that face, and
Yeah.
he was really good in this movie. He was good. I was actually surprised to see that he was in this movie, and it's a shame that he hasn't been in more like blockbusters. But he's been in television, like he's stay on television, so it's kind of hard to get away from him. The next person is Elliot Keener. They played Randall Poe. You can also see him in Angel Heart and The Big Easy.
Nice. The next actor is Willie C. Carpenter. He played the character Elijah Roper, and he could also be seen in Men in Black and Collateral Beauty.
Right. And up next is Cassie Lemons. She played Detective Marie Mitchell. And you can see her in Silence of the Lambs that we covered in episode 54 and Candyman.
Is that the old or the new Candyman?
The original Candyman. I forgot to put the year.
Okay, cool. All right. Now, I'm going to say Sven Ole Thorsen.
Oh, man, you got it right on the money, at least in my estimation, because that's how I pronounce
it. It sounded right. It's kind of like a golf swing. It's just like, oh, it felt right. So
Right.
And he's been in The Running Man and Red Heat.
Right. He's not really a huge player in this movie, but I had to include him because I just like seeing him. Well, actually, him and Willie C. Carpenter. He's been in a lot of movies too, and it's just like he just got that recognizable face, both of them. So Sven, in The Running Man, he was the bodyguard for Richard Dawson. He was that guy, and then Oh, do you remember?
Yeah, I do, and now I'm connecting the dots for who he was in this film, and he was the guy with the cigar. And I'm not gonna give it away, but I have some notes on that too. So
I don't know if we're talking about the same guy. He was the big dude with the full beard and the big gun. He was one of the mercenaries at the end of the movie.
The mercenary with the red shirt.
Oh man, I don't remember what he was wearing.
I think he had a red shirt, and because there's actually two guys that had a cigar. There's a big fat slob guy, and then there's kind of like a svelte, mercenary guy that has a cigar. And then, all right, I'm just gonna say it. So Van Damme shoots him like 8 times, and then he's just like, oh, nothing happened, and then he gives him a karate kick, and then that's what ultimately takes him down. But so I think that's Sven.
Right, that might be him.
Yeah.
The only other movie that I remember him from. Well, actually, he was in a TV show called I can't remember the name of the show now anymore. It was a TV show that was based on a toy, and it was a unique show where you use the toy with the TV show. Captain Power and the Soldiers of the Future. That's what it was called. He was in that. And then I remember him from Gladiator. So that was
nice.
And Gladiator, he was the giant gladiator with the metal faceplate, the metal mask, and the mask had a tear running down. So I guess he's supposed to be Samson. So yeah, that was him. We spent too much time on Sven. That's totally my fault.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
Up next is let us know who the director was.
So this was directed by John Woo, and he's actually a really fun director. So I'm really glad that we had a chance to watch a John Woo fan. John Woo has directed a lot of different films, and some of them, the ones that we're highlighting today, are A Better Tomorrow, Hard Boiled, The Awesome Amazing Face Off, Paycheck, and also Silent Night.
Yes. The thing about him is that he's a storied Hong Kong film director, and it's like when his movie started coming out in Hong Kong, Hollywood was just calling. It was like, he had meetings with people. They've been trying to bring him over to the States. He wasn't a strong English speaker, but that didn't stop people from really wanting him to direct a Hollywood movie. So this was his first one. So it's going to be interesting to talk about that. So up next we have the writer. This movie was written by Chuck Parar. Ooh, there's that name again.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Uh, and here's some more names again. Barbed Wire. He was in. He wrote because he was in it because he wrote it. Red Planet. Virus. He was in it because he wrote it. Jackal and Darkman, which is one of my favorite movies. I can't wait to talk about that one. So it's not like he's a bad writer. No, he's pretty good because he wrote Darkman. And then I heard the Jackal was good, but Barbed Wire and Red Planet, I don't think that they were good. And I heard that Virus was weird. I heard some people talking about that on the podcast, and they were talking about how strange it was. And it's kind of an acquired taste. But I'm not looking forward to acquiring that taste. Have you seen any of these movies?
I want to say I've seen bits and parts of Barbed Wire. Admittedly, I just wanted to see Pam Anderson in that, but
Right.
I was not able to finish that. I have seen bits of the Jackal, and I've seen most of Darkman. I guess this is
Right.
showing that I don't finish films for whatever reason. So
Right. Well, it's no shame in not finishing movies that you're not interested in or that don't entertain you. They're there for your entertainment, and if they don't work, you should be punished to finish the whole film. Like sometimes you feel obligated to because maybe you're asked to give your opinion on it or whatever, but you shouldn't have to, right?
yeah, I mean, there's some
What you call it?
films that are bad that I can just watch no problem. Like you put on like a
Right, right,
Leprechaun 2, I will watch that no problem. And it's
right.
crazy. So I'm gonna go into music. So the music is by Grammy Revel. I don't know if I pronounced that right. And Tim Simonek and Grammy. They've done Strange Days, Tank Girl, Bled, The Saint, and Spawn, which I recently watched. Um,
Oh,
Tim Simnick is he's a conductor orchestrator, and he's done The Ghost in the Machine, The Fantastic Crow, which is like one of my favorite films, The Crush, and one of the Bruce Campbell film, The Army of Darkness. So really great projects there.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So in these movies, he's credited as orchestrator. And sometimes he's a conductor, but in most of these, he's the orchestrator. This is the first time I've seen that particular credit. Because they don't really identify him as the conductor. I think they identified Grame or Grime, I don't know how to say it either, as the conductor. It's weird that I would put his first name there. That's kind of weird. So anyway, yeah, they usually I guess because I'm not even exactly sure if the conductor always writes and then conducts the music himself, or sometimes he writes and then passes that music to another conductor to conduct. I think that's what happens in this case, and this is the first time I've seen it split up.
Mm.
But anyways, the music was fine. It wasn't particular. It's like not particularly noticeable or impactful. It was just serviceable. Like it worked. Like it worked the way music is supposed to work, but it's not like something you're going to be humming after you leave the theater.
No, totally not. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some funny like music cues in this film, which I'll just say like overall, I thought this movie was hilarious. Just because of the way that, and I know it's like supposed to be like this gritty crime drama and just chaos, but there were just so many things about this film that I just thought were really hilarious. So and I'm sure we'll talk about that, but the music was one of those things.
Right, right. So that's it for the opening credits. And up next, we have these announcements I want to make. I can't remember what my schedule is. I have to admit. All right, so I don't really have any announcements, but I have been listening to this podcast called Spine Chillers and Serial Killers. And I'm going to go ahead and play this promo for you. So you get the same kind of chills that I get. And then you can understand why I felt compelled to promote this podcast on this show.
The full moon hangs high above the tree line and serves as a spotlight on a woman approaching a dilapidated cabin. Its uneven timbers and cracked windows give the structure a creepy and unsettling appearance. The woman is Tash, and she's just returning from having coffee with a friend.
God, we need to oil that door.
Hey girls, what you up to?
Nothing much, just sat here in our creepy cabin, waiting for the kettle to boil.
At that moment, Tash's foot catches on a dusty tool for summoning spirits.
Ow! Emma, for God's sake, can you get rid of this Ouija board?
Look, I've tried multiple times after the whole demonic possession incident, but it just keeps reappearing, so I've given up.
I bet if it had been you that had got possessed, you would have gotten rid of it. I'm still trying to get the green puke out of my favourite PJs.
God, you're really never going to get over that, are you?
Well, no, Emma. Having your head rotate 180 degrees tends to stay with you for a while.
Girls, the kettle's boiled. I'll make some tea. Stop bitching.
Yeah, a cup of fixes everything.
Did you see Ed outside, Tash?
Yeah, he's still there. He must be freezing. I'll make him a cup of tea. It's a bit odd that he stands outside and narrates everything we do. And I mean everything.
The ladies in the cabin stare off into the distance, contemplating the weird man narrating at the door.
No, I think it's nice. Plus, what else is he going to do? It's not like he's got his own podcast to work on, is it?
Well, actually, I do have my own podcast. It's called Octoberpod, and we tell true, true-ish, and classic...
It's okay, Ed. You don't have to explain. We like having you around.
Speaking of the podcast, shouldn't we make the trailer for ours?
Yeah, I thought that too. But first, I've just got to tell you about the murderer they just caught in town.
Oh, thank God they caught him. I was losing sleep, and believe me, sleeping with a room full of ghosts isn't an easy task at the best of times.
Get rid of the Ouija board.
All right, God's sake. Anyway, Bex, what about this murderer then? Afterwards, I've got one hell of a spooky story to tell you guys.
I'll make myself comfortable then.
Spine Chillers and Serial Killers is a bi-weekly podcast where three friends, Tash, Bex, and Emma, discuss one true crime case and one tale of the paranormal. If you enjoy spooky, murdery stuff with a good dose of laughter, random singing, and the odd off-topic wander, then this is the podcast for you. You can find them anywhere you get podcasts. Strictly for adult audiences only.
Thanks, Ed.
Stay safe.
Don't kill people.
And keep it weird.
And so that's Spine Chillers and Serial Killers. Let's go on to the next part of this show. We're going to talk about our top 5 favorite parts. So, Jayson, why don't you let the audience know what's one of your favorite parts? We're going to go back and forth. We're going to explain our favorite parts to the audience, and then so they can understand why we are so infatuated with this movie.
Okay, yeah. So I want to just quickly scan over my notes, and I'm gonna say the intro of when Van Damme is first introduced. So he's like in this New Orleans cafe. And we don't see him at first. And then the camera goes into an extreme close-up of what he's eating. And it looks like he's eating like this swamp porridge. And so it's just like, that doesn't look good. So then, it cuts to a very close-up of his eyes. It's just like, it's almost off-putting, like, the director is just in love with Van Damme. So then, we hear the waitress talking about, well, how is the soup? And he's just like, oh, it's terrible. And she was like, well, but then he says, well, the coffee is okay. And then the waitress was like, well, everything costs. So then Van Damme, being the most Van Damme way possible, slides her like 61 cents. And now the waitress is like, oh my God. She's like, she's so enamored with Van Damme after that. So I thought that was really funny. So I really enjoyed that little scene.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I thought that was a cool scene. I'm gonna go with one of my favorite parts was like the first hunt. They introduced the movie with a man running at night, and he's escaping some. It seems like some nefarious people. There's some guys that's hounding him on motorcycles, and then there are several other guys shooting at him, and he's like trying to run, and he's got this what you call it? I don't know, this panic and fearful look about him. And it's just the action sequences of them chasing him. Like this guy is shooting like a high power arrow at him, and then they do a close up of the arrow as it's going through the air, and then it barely missed the dude that's being chased. Finally, they catch up with him. They put arrows through him. They shot him. They cut a money belt off of his body. So I found that thrilling and exciting. I thought that that opening sequence to open up this action movie, where they opened up, where it kind of I want to say, I don't think that it explains the movie. You kind of get that in a trailer. So you're going to, with this opening sequence, you get a little bit of the premise and a little bit of the style of action that you're going to see in this movie. So I did like that part. I like the way it opened.
I have a question about that for you. So I remember in that beginning part, the main bad guy says, if he gets to the river, he wins. And
right.
I remember he got to the river. I mean, he got to the boat dock. So shouldn't.
I think that I think the idea is that he's supposed to get on the boat.
Oh,
and then once he got to the boat, he can, like, once he starts to drive away in the boat, then he won. But the bad guys don't strike me as people who would allow that to happen, because like it's not like they have witnesses or scruples. So it's like I don't see them as people keeping their word. But we don't see an example of somebody actually escaping. So I can just chalk that up to him not reaching the actual finish line. The actual finish line is the boat that's on the river. That's why he was on the dock. Otherwise, he could have just dove into the water and be done with it.
Yeah, that's true.
So go ahead and let us know what's another part that you liked.
This is all probably paying a lot of homage to Van Damme, because at the time this film was made, he's at the height of his success, and I can tell that a lot of these parts were kind of tailored to him almost being superhuman at this point, at least the portrayal of him. So a part that I really liked was after he's like in some warehouse and he's thinking, and then he sees a dove that kind of lands, and somehow that dove telepathically tells him to go to this building. So he goes to the building and he finds that this dog tag, and then these guys show up to kind of rough him up. And the part of the scene that I like is one of these guys, they take a bat and they literally hit him in the private parts, the male private parts. And Van Damme just kind of shakes it off like it's a minor inconvenience. And I thought that was like, so Van Damme, so badass, 80s, 90s flicks, to the max. And I just thought that was really funny and awesome at the same time.
All right. Yeah. That is kind of funny. There are a lot of, and it's not just Van Damme. There are a lot of Arnold Schwarzenegger is most egregious, and the type of feats of strength that he's able to do in his movies, like he's just a regular person, and he's able to do some incredible things that no human could possibly do, but they allow him to do it just by virtue of him being muscular. But it's like, no, a human being can't do that. But yeah, you're exactly right. He is able to take a lot more punishment than you would expect a normal human to be able to. But in his defense, I will say that I have seen martial arts demonstrations, well, where somebody gets kicked in the junk and like lifted off the ground, and the guy doesn't react to it, but it was part of a demonstration. So he was basically demonstrating how he was able to ignore pain. So in order to you like complete the fight, like he's not going to crumble, because there are certain parts where you get hit. Like if you get hit in the not the kidney, but in the I forgot what you get hit in, but there's a I want to say maybe it is the kidney, but there are certain parts of the body where you get hit where you just crumble because it basically shuts you down. It's almost like getting hit in the head. So there is that, but there's no reason for you to crumble when you get kicked in the junk, unless what you call it, unless you're like really sensitive to pain. I guess it's something that you can get used to. All I'm saying is that I've seen a demonstration, and I can see how how that could happen. But I'm not that guy. Like I'm not a guy that's gonna like if you kick me in the junk, I'm gonna go down. It's just that's just the way I was built.
Yeah. Well, Van Damme is superhuman in this part. So yeah. So I can respect that.
Right. So there are a number of things that I like, coupled with some things that I did not like. So one of my favorite fights is you had alluded to when he was what you call it, the bar scene, when he's had to exchange with the waitress or his server. So when he comes out of the bar and he sees that this woman is in trouble, she's being harassed by some dudes because they saw that she had some money, and he goes and he gets into this fight with these dudes, and obviously he beats them all up. This is like that hero's moment at the beginning of the movie, just to show how much of a badass he is, and he takes them all down. So the funny thing about this is that a lot of this is shot in slow motion, and I want to say this movie in particular is probably an inspiration for how what's his name, Zack Snyder conducts his movies, because he does a lot of his movies in slow motion, and there's a lot of slow motion in Hard Target, and I thought it was egregious. Like it's way too much slow motion in Hard Target, and I thought that was the style that he wanted to do. I haven't seen a lot of John Woo movies, but I think that this movie probably is the one that uses the most slow motion. And I want to go back to when I talked about watching it like originally 30 years ago and watching it today, because today on high definition television you can see everything. Like you can tell when it's a stunt man and when it's Jean-Claude, and you can tell when what you call it, not necessarily when somebody is actually like faking getting hit, but it lessens the impact of the action when you're using so much slow motion. The other thing that's problematic is that when he's firing his gun, when you fire a gun in slow motion, you can kind of see when he's blinking his eyes. But if you're supposed to be like a mercenary or a soldier or somebody who shoots guns a lot, you don't really have that reflex anymore. You don't tend to close your eyes if you're used to shooting a gun all the time. And if this is a guy that used to shooting a gun, he shouldn't be wincing or blinking at the muzzle. So you see a lot of that, and you can you can see it clearly in slow motion. So that was the thing that kind of took some of the sting out of the performance, like all of the egregious slow motion. But in spite of that, I still enjoyed most of the fights. And this first fight, like he did some nice sweeps, some very clever maneuvers in that first fight. So I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I think with a lot of 80s and 90s action films, you have to suspend the disbelief that you have and just go in as a willing participant that you're going to, have a good time with these films. And, I know that, we're doing a critique about it and what things that, are problematic and things that we love about it. But overall, this is a really fun film to watch. You just have to put yourself in the mind of, okay, I'm going to watch an over the top action film and it's going to be fun. And, there's going to be things that, don't quite make sense. One of the things I noticed, if we're nitpicking is, have you noticed that whenever the guys are shooting at Van Damme and they're in the forest or in like this factory, this Mardi Gras factory, everything has like an explosive effect. So like if they shoot at,
Oh yeah.
it's just like, why are these bullets exploding? So so it's just shooting at trees. It's just like there's not gunpowder.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it's funny, but at the same time, it looks cool on, if you're turning your brain off and you're not thinking about it, it looks cool. So
Yeah, absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. Like, and especially in the late 80s or early 90s, everything needed to blow up. So things would just kind of blow up without a whole lot of provocation. It was just you got to have some explosions. And I'm not too mad at the explosions at all. And you're right. You do have to watch your expectations when you're watching these movies. You got to kind of go in knowing, especially when you're dealing with older movies, and you're watching them on these high definition televisions. You got to go in watching these movies knowing that you're going to see some stuff that you hadn't seen when you first watched the movie. So I think that I was like stunned that I could tell whenever they switched off to a stuntman, because normally it's not something that I notice. I'm like really dense like that. Like there are a lot of things that I don't notice until like somebody will tell me, like maybe a week later talking about the movie, they'll like mention something that there's no way I would have caught on my own. But in this movie, I noticed it. So I was shocked at how on this particular viewing, how obvious it was.
mm-hmm.
I feel like most of my favorite parts are going to be like some of the fight scenes, but there's one line that I really like. It stuck with me like for most of my life. And then so it's kind of an exchange between Natasha and Chance. So, she asks what's his name, and he says, my name is Chance. And she says, what kind of a name is Chance? And he says, my mama took one. And that's one of my favorite lines ever. It's just so good.
Yeah. That is a good line. Yeah. That is a good line. It says a lot without saying a lot. So it's just like, yeah, that is a good line.
Yeah. I really enjoyed that.
Did you want me to go over another one of my favorite parts?
Yeah, let's do two more, and then I think that'll fulfill our obligation to explain why we like these movies.
Okay. So the character, what's his name? Ledger Roper. So he takes the challenge that we see that the first guy failed in the beginning. And the challenge is, the bad guys will give you $10,000 cash, and they're targeting homeless veterans. And the idea is they have to get from this point, which is about 10 miles, to the river. And once they get to the river, they're free. So this character, Roper, takes the challenge, and he's a complete badass, because he's able to elude the baddies and even kill one of them. However, he gets to the French Quarter. And at this point, you're thinking, oh, there's people around, he's going to, say, help me, and someone's going to help him. But he's like the most unlucky guy in the world. Everyone's just saying, get away from me, get away from me. And then finally he comes to the conclusion that, no one's going to help him, and that, he's going to surrender to, his fate. And that's when they plug like maybe 1,000 bullets in this guy, and he goes down. So I really liked that part because one, you know, whenever you have black people in films, it's just like we're always like the first one snuffed off, like within 2 or 3 steps. But this happened to be that this guy was a complete badass. He was a Army veteran. He was able to get away, but by the circumstance of people not helping him was the only reason why he would have met demise. So, kind of like one of those bittersweet moments where, you know, he should have got away, but he didn't. But at the same time, my hat's off to him.
Right. And you also had Detective Mitchell. She also lasted. She, even though she was killed earlier in the film, she went out in a very good gunfight. So, and I felt like her her action and her skills in a gunfight were really cool. So she went out in a really cool way. And that I don't know if she took somebody out, like if she was able to kill somebody when she got shot, but I do like her just the way she performed in that moment. So I felt like it was it's going to sound like a Klingon, but it was an honorable death.
Yeah.
if I can say that. One of I've got like 3. I was like, I'm only supposed to have 2 more, but I got like 3 I want to talk about. Well, it's not my favorite part, but I just want to make a note of Wilford Brimley as being in the movie. I don't think I put him in the opening credits. I sure didn't. I meant to put him in there, but he's in there. He plays Chance's uncle. And it was a surprise to see because every time I see him, I'm always expecting the guy that's trying to sell me what do you call it?
Oatmeal.
No, not oatmeal. He's always talking about diabetes. He's like, I take this because of diabetes. Yeah, he's that guy. But it's funny, right? Because when you see one of the earliest movies that he was in is The Thing, and I had never seen The Thing before, and I seen it for the first time a while ago, and I was like, and I'm looking for Wilford Brimley because I have a picture in my head of what he's supposed to look like, and I don't recognize him at first, and then I finally see him. He's much younger, and he doesn't have his trademark mustache, and I was like, oh my god, that's him. And he's such a different person from the person that he acts like in the diabetes commercial. And then in this movie he plays he's supposed to be playing a Cajun. And I've seen some comments, people were saying like, you know, his accent is terrible. But to me, like, I wouldn't know. So it's only for people who live in that area, in that region. They would know what the accent sounds like. But for me, it's good enough. It's just gonna sound convincing to me. And I guess in the same way, the reason that it's set in New Orleans is because Jean-Claude Van Damme has a thick French accent. So this was supposed to explain his accent, but his accent is a European French, not New Orleans French. So still people would be able to tell the difference. But it's just kind of like some hand wavy thing to do to say that he's an American with a really messed up accent. And then there's what you call it. So as far as I'm concerned, it's a very passable accent, and his acting in the movie was so different from what I've seen him as. And then when I think about it, he kind of sounds like what's his name? I didn't forgot his name already. There's a character in the X-Men who throws playing cards at people. His name is Gambit.
Oh, okay.
So he kind of sounds like Gambit to me. And that's not a favorite part. I just want to acknowledge that he was in the movie. So my favorite part is one of my favorite parts. There's a motorcycle car fight. So that was fun. I like that. So Jean-Claude, he's on a motorcycle. He's going up against cars. He's going up against other motorcycles. He's standing on top of the motorcycle, balancing himself on the top of the motorcycle, and then shooting his guns with both hands as he's standing on top of the motorcycle while the motorcycle is going, like while it's running. And this is like the money shot. This is what you see in the trailers. He's doing all types of stuff on a motorcycle. It's that was a fabulous sequence with him and a motorcycle. And that's definitely one of my favorite parts, even though it was one of those parts where he's blinking as he's firing the gun and you can see the stunt double whenever the stunt double takes over. But besides that, I really enjoyed it.
One of my favorite parts about that motorcycle SUV scene is when they're playing chicken and he's standing on the motorcycle, and right when the motorcycle and the SUV collide, Van Damme does this like Olympic tumble over the SUV and perfectly lands. And then as the vehicle collides with the motorcycle, it explodes, taking out a couple of the bad guys. But what's really interesting is when some of the other bad guys show up and they start shooting at the SUV, it explodes again, like maybe 4 or 5 more times after that first subsequent explosion. So you're thinking, how many bombs are in this SUV? It's like grenades or whatever. So, but it's kind of a cool shot because, you see Van Damme hauling ass away from this SUV as it's exploding 6 or 7 times. And, you have the explosions in the background and, guys blowing up. So it's a very 90s shot, if you will.
Right. Also, the thing is, what you call it? I think that there were some bombs involved, like actual dynamite involved. So I'm pretty sure that somebody will like kind of hand wave you away. It's like, well, see, he had some dynamite, so that's one way you can get around so many explosions. The other thing was there were grenades involved, but one of the things you notice about handling real life grenades and seeing Hollywood grenades is that Hollywood grenades are way more explosive than the actual grenades that are being depicted. So there's a lot of that going on. So that's always fun. But I we can't get enough of explosions. Like blow everything up, as far as I know.
Yeah.
You can blow everything up as far as I'm concerned. So my last favorite part is basically Lance Henriksen's performance, like as Emile Fouchon. So the funny thing is that he's like cool and he's cultured and he's kind of has an air about him, like he's kind of blasé about certain things, and then he'll lose his cool. Like he's constantly beating up his henchmen. It's like he's knocking him down, he's yelling at him, he's screaming at him. He's fun. I like whenever he loses his composure, that he kind of loses his ability to restrain himself from like shooting at his henchmen or kicking him or whatever he needs to do. But I noticed that the only person that he doesn't like attack is Pick Van Cleef. That's the only guy that he actually respects. He didn't really respect anybody else. So I really enjoyed that character and that performance. And how they start to lose, like it's starting to become more difficult to do these hunts in New Orleans. So he's like, well, we're just going to go to another country. It's no matter to me. I'm super wealthy. I was like, and the problem is, and this is probably me, the problem is I think that there are too many wealthy people who think like this.
Yeah.
It's like I almost believe that hunting human beings is a real thing that wealthy people actually do. I'm sure it's not a real thing, but the way things are going in this world right now, it's like it gets you to thinking. Now I'm starting to have conspiracy theories, but I do enjoy that performance.
I would say that there's at least 3 films I can think of off the top of my head that hunting humans is like a thing, and so that's Hard Target, The Running Man, and Surviving the Game with Ice-T. So I know there's got to be more. So yeah. So I don't know. Maybe I hope not. But yeah, that's one of those things that you talk about in society, and anything is possible. So.
Right. You mentioned The Running Man. That's right. I hadn't thought about that movie. And yeah, that is the thing. And they made it like, it's like, this is different. This is like a flip on the same concept. Like in this movie, they're doing it in secret. They have to be underground. It's run by rich people. And the Running Man, it's a game show. It's like everybody's in on it. People are betting on it. It's the most popular show in the world, right?
Yeah.
And then the people that are doing the killing, they are the superstars. They're the most
They're
popular
the
people.
heroes,
They're
yeah.
the people that the audience are actually cheering for. So yeah, that's good. That's a good pull that you did. I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you.
Yeah.
So was there anything else you wanted to mention, or did you wanted to take note of, or are you ready to move on to the next part?
We can move on to trivia if you like.
All right, that's awesome. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to move on into the trivia. I chose 10 of the top 10 of the most interesting pieces of trivia that I could scrape off of IMDb. So, why don't you hit us with the first piece of trivia?
Sure. So first one is Universal was afraid that John Woo's limited English would be a problem on set, so they hired Sam Raimi to oversee the entire shoot and replace Woo if need be. That's interesting.
That is interesting. It's also interesting. I don't see anything that corroborates this in the rest of the trivia, but I believe it. Seeing it, it's something that I can see that they would do.
Yeah, if you think about it, you could probably, because John Woo is really a stylistic film director. So when I can kind of see this influence to when you think about Sam Raimi and Spider-Man, you can see some of those same shots, some of those same slow motions, especially when Tobey Maguire. So when the Green Goblin throws the grenade at Tobey Maguire and half of his mask is blown off. That's all done in John Woo's slow motion style. So I can definitely see some influence there.
Right, absolutely. So Hollywood had already shown interest in John Woo when he was approached by Warner Brothers and director Oliver Stone to direct a modern kung fu movie. The project ultimately fell through, and Woo went on to make Hard Boiled instead. Afterwards, he was offered the screenplay to Hard Target, and although he liked the story, he thought that the film would be too difficult to make. Jean-Claude Van Damme had already been a huge fan of Woo's films and arranged to meet him in Hong Kong, together with writer Chuck Parrar and producer James Jacks. The two got along well, despite both Woo and Van Damme's difficulty with their English. On working with Van Damme, Woo later stated that he was, quote, sure of my own abilities, and I know how to make an actor look good on screen. Make him look like a hero. I thought I could do the same for Van Damme, end quote. Despite early misgivings of working with Van Damme, Woo changed many action scenes in the film to make them more spectacular on finding that Van Damme was up for it. While working with Van Damme, Woo stated that Van Damme had, quote, a pretty big ego, but he's still professional and always tries to do a good job, end quote. He's being very polite in that instance.
Yeah, you might as well just said Van Damme was a dick.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah, this is one of my fears, is that I'm going to work with one of these actors that just their ego is just way out of control, and then we lose control of the project. I don't think that would be the case, but I think every director has an island of the Dr. Moreau in the back of their mind with Val Kilmer and gosh, now I'm forgetting his name. Brando. I don't know if you know about that, but that was a
I don't know about the behind the scenes. I just know that Marlon Brando could be hard to work with, but I didn't know anything about that movie.
So just real briefly, on that film, they hired a new director, and Val Kilmer and Marlon Brando had this thing where one of them would stay in their trailer until the other one came out first, and it became like a standoff. And they're just like, well, if he's not going to come out with a trailer first, then I'm not going to come out with a trailer first. So they were just staying in the trailer the whole day. And so, that happened throughout the set, and just, just crazy things like that. Val Kilmer disappearing and Brando disappearing, just things that you just take a project off the rails. So that film director ultimately had a nervous breakdown to film the director of that film, and then they replaced him. So that's like, extreme horror stories, but but it happens. So
Right. That's crazy.
yeah. So next up on the trivia, Kurt Russell, which is also a really great actor, was originally sought out for the role of Chance Bordeaux, but they couldn't wait 2 years to film it with them. The studio then went to Jean-Claude Van Damme, who had met Wu when he said that he was filming Double Impact in Hong Kong. It was also likely that Universal Pictures decided that they wanted to be in the Van Damme business. They had successfully released his martial arts epic Lionheart in 1991, and his films released between that film and Hard Target had all been strong performers domestically and internationally.
Yeah, they saw the money. That's what that was. Yeah, Van Damme, as you mentioned earlier, was at the top of his career at the time. So it's like there's pretty much nothing that he couldn't do, and then that's when like the ego takes over. That's when it's suddenly you're not just the actor anymore. Now you're the director and the producer. So yeah, I can see that happening. So John Woo originally cut. Well, I'm reading it wrong. It's supposed to read like this. John Woo's original cut of the film ran nearly 2 hours and focused more on Fushan. Jean-Claude Van Damme and his editor locked themselves in an editing room for 2 days and re-edited the film for the producers. Van Damme stated that moviegoers were paying to see a Van Damme movie, not a Lance Hendrickson movie.
Oh God.
Ooh,
yeah.
That's nasty.
That's the underbelly of this film industry.
Right.
The ego just takes control and just does all type of terrible things. Lance Hendrickson accepted the role of Emile Fushan, stating that he was a great fan of John Woo, noting that his earlier films were so creative, so balletic. Balletic. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right.
Yeah.
And had
I think that's right.
an incredible philosophy in them. The violence was only a container for the philosophy. That's well said.
Yeah. And he definitely has an incredible style about him. There's a lot of gun flipping and like some artistic way in which the actors handled guns. Like there's a famous trope that they use in action movies where you have the two opponents and they're pointing their pistols at each other's heads.
Mhm.
So that's something that John Woo is famous for doing in a lot of his movies. And then he is basically copied by other directors with that same style. So yeah, it does look like ballet when you watch a movie. It's like you just don't point a gun at people. You got to twirl it a little bit. You got to flip it, right?
Yeah.
You got to play with it, and then you can point the gun. That's how you do it in a John Woo movie.
Yeah.
So John Woo turned down the script for Face Off to direct this instead, as the science fiction side of that movie didn't interest him. He had a change of heart 4 years later when he did choose to direct Face Off. I want his face off. I want his face off.
Wow. Yeah. Face Off is one of my. Face Off is a film I probably saw at least 30 times easy. It's
right.
I wouldn't call it one of my favorite films, but it's just a very enjoyable film where I turn off the brain. I look at Nicolas Cage and Travolta and just have a good time.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and Joan Allen is good in it too. So I don't want to forget about her.
Right.
Yeah. So next one is, during the first test screening of the film, John Woo turned to a producer and noted that they never did such previews in Hong Kong. The producer asked him how he knew if people liked the film or not, and Woo responded, "Oh, if they don't like it, they set the theater on fire and slashed the seats. Nah, I call bullshit on that.
Probably, yeah,
Yeah.
probably not truthful, but that is he might be exaggerating a little bit. Maybe they do get rowdy when they see a movie that they don't like.
Yeah, I totally don't see that happening in China. So come on.
Right. Up next, Lance Henriksen's pistol is a Thompson Center Contender. It is a single shot pistol featuring interchangeable barrels of different calibers. It was a very interesting weapon that he used in the movie, and he was very stylized in the way that he used it. So yeah, he did have to have, like, as the leader of the gang and everything, he did have to have the most unique weapon in the whole movie.
Yeah, I remember the kind of the introduction of that gun. It's when Van Damme and the girl are escaping on the train, and he pulls the gun out, he opens it up, he puts the bullet in it, then he aims it, and he's just like, I'm not going to shoot that. So it's just
Right.
Like, what was all that for?
Well, he lost the target. Like, as he was trying to aim at him, the train had basically kind of covered them, and so he couldn't see them anymore. Like, he was taking too long to aim and then shoot. But if he were able to hit a moving target, then he would have been great. It's like he's very good with that weapon, but you don't really see that in that particular scene. And as a matter of fact, the fact that you have to wait, or he has chosen to load it every single time, and then when he's not using it, he unloads it. So I don't know if that's necessary for that particular gun, but it does make that weapon cumbersome to use if you have to load it every single time, right?
Yeah, it's like going back to like 1912.
Right.
You go up against the Uzi, then you're dead turkey. So
right.
You better make sure you hit your target on that one.
Absolutely.
Okay, John Woo's English language debut. This is John Woo's English language debut. This also marked the first big Hollywood studio movie to be helmed by an Asian director. Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. That's impressive. And this movie did pretty good, and he did a number of other American films, and he's still doing movies today. So yeah, he knows what he's doing. He's accomplished. I think that's the word that you use for that.
Yeah, he's a pioneer for Asian directors. That's fantastic.
Absolutely. So finally, we have this last piece of trivia. During the break between scenes, Jean-Claude Van Damme approached Arnold Vosloo and asked him where he was from. Vosloo replied with South Africa, to which Van Damme angrily responded that he should go back there because he'll never make it in Hollywood. I guess they didn't get along or something. This sounds like a part of a feud.
Yeah, that's I would say another dick move. What does that have anything to do with where you're from? But Van Damme at this point, if you're told you're great every single day for like this period of time, your ego has got to be massive, to the point where you can't even get through the. So whenever you see someone that is talented, and I definitely think that Vosloo was definitely talented. I think you take that as a little bit of a challenge, to your ego. And maybe that is why he would say that, because, this is, we're just actors on set, everyone's trying to do what they love. And so you don't really have time or, place for in the ego like that.
Yeah, I think some of it has to do with ego. This might be a part of maybe they hadn't got along during the shoot. That could be it. I think this is also after Vosloo. I think this is after he did at least one of the Mummy movies. So it's not like he's a slouch. So he also had an ego problem. I didn't look into that this particular piece of trivia too much. So I don't know how much of it is just Van Damme being mean, or maybe Vosloo was being rude. It's kind of hard to gauge at from afar. But that was kind of a nasty thing to say. That I don't think it had anything to do with where he was from. It was just Van Damme was trying to make a point of insulting him. So he's like, you should go back to where you came from because you're terrible.
Yeah.
I think that's what he's saying. But like I don't know. I just thought it was interesting that this exchange happened with these two actors, and to kind of get a peek into a little bit of what Van Damme might, where his, I don't know, guiding light may have been at that time. So that's it for the trivia. And up next, we're going to talk about what the critics thought. And we're back. So we're at the critics' thoughts. And the critics gave it a 60%. Audiences have it at 49% on Rotten Tomatoes. IMDb Reviews has it at 6.2 out of 10. And this is interesting. I feel like IMDb Reviews kind of sits with in between what the audience and what the critics have it at on Rotten Tomatoes. Kind of very middle of the road, this movie, but as far as people who are reviewing it. But I found it to be very entertaining, especially when it first came out. Maybe it was because I was so much younger, and it was so easy to entertain me at that time. Just an action movie with Jean-Claude Van Damme. I'm all in. I'm automatically good with it.
These are,
go ahead.
These are harsh reviews here. I would say,
yeah,
definitely at least a 7. I mean, come on, it's like, but I do think that critics and audiences look for certain things, maybe different things. I think an audience wants to be entertained, and a critic is probably going to look for more cohesive story and things that make sense. But 60%, that's like a low D. So that's almost failed.
Yeah.
So
almost, but not quite. Still fresh.
Yeah. Gosh.
Actually, what I find fascinating is that the critic score is actually higher than the audience score, and it's usually the other way around. So I think that's the most interesting thing about this movie.
Yeah, that's amazing. So Chris Knight of the Calgary Herald said that this has a long legacy in cinema that is worth considering, but I surprisingly didn't enjoy rewatching this. I found myself shrugging my shoulders a lot and being bothered by Winston's character arc or lack thereof.
Yeah. You get a lot of character arcs that don't get fully fulfilled, or you feel that they could have did more with them. I don't think I was bothered all that much with the lack of character. You know what? I think this is a problem. Hold on a second. So that first one that you read, that's actually a review for Ghostbusters.
Oh,
I forgot to change that one out. I was like, wait a minute, Winston. I don't remember Winston being in this movie.
I was thinking, I was just like, is his last name Winston? But no,
that's a mistake.
Bordeaux.
That's actually a review for Ghostbusters. My bad. I'm looking at the rest of them. The rest of them are actually for this movie.
Oh, no worries. I will say though, if you really do think about it, Bordeaux's character did not really have a big character arc in this film, if you think about it, because when we first are introduced to him, he roughs up those guys. Then, he goes on the trail to roughing up more guys. And then, he, progresses and he kills all the bad guys. So, never in that was he really down. I guess the only thing that he had to struggle was when he was surprised and jumped by those two guys. But for the most part, it was a steady incline towards his goal.
Right. Yeah, it's more, and this movie is just something where you're supposed to learn more about Bordeaux. but you don't. I think I said his name wrong. But you're supposed to know more. You're supposed to learn about the character because he's supposed to be like a mysterious character in the beginning, and then as the movie unfolds, you're supposed to learn more and more about him.
Mm.
But I don't think we got that sense. I don't think we knew. It's like we learned a whole lot from that character. And you're correct. He didn't have this really any kind of a story arc. He actually starts the movie and ends the movie in the same place. Like he doesn't get like a big revelation. There's no big reveal. And you had mentioned the pigeon moment, and this was something that I read in IMDb that I didn't put in the trivia. Is that this is kind of a trademark that John Woo uses in his films. To him, he normally uses doves, but for whatever reason he didn't use a dove. He used a pigeon instead. And this is supposed to indicate purity. It also is supposed to indicate like a change in the hero where he comes to like a realization or a conclusion, or it's a Super Saiyan moment. It's the hero mentally becomes Super Saiyan. It's Spider-Man lifting off the heavy logs off of his back, and it's the stepping up and becoming a hero moment in the John Woo movies. So I wouldn't have known that had I not read that in the trivia. But that's an interesting device to use. That's why after he sees the prison, you had mentioned that he goes to the burnt out building and he finds more clues, and that the pigeon basically, as you said, told him so. They did it on purpose.
Yeah.
But the thing is that and I think that just goes to show that the whole purpose of this movie is to watch him beat people up, and it's not much more than that. And even like a movie like Kickboxer or Bloodsport, the character arc is usually he's a fighter, but he's not that good, and at the end of the movie he's a better fighter. That's normally what his character arc is. But we're not getting anything out of this, and I don't think anybody really has a character arc. It functions more as an episode of a TV show than a movie about character.
True, I can see that.
So
I can take the next one.
If you go to the second one is actually about this movie.
Okay. So Matt Brunson of Film Frenzy said that Wilford Brimley pops up as Uncle Dove. He's supposed to be Cajun, but sounds more like Maurice Chalavet shot full of Novocaine. And that's harsh, I mean, I don't really know what Cajun accent is supposed to sound like, because I recently learned that there's Creole and there's Cajun. And they're two separate things. But it sounded like someone that was Cajun from New Orleans to me. So I'm gonna have to say that's maybe nitpicky to me.
Yeah, me too. I agree. I remember I was talking to somebody who was from Nigeria, and they were complaining about how American actors, they have terrible African accents, and I basically told the same thing to her. I was like, we can't tell. Like people in America, we can't tell, and the movie isn't necessarily for people in Nigeria. It's for Americans. And if you happen to enjoy it, that's just kind of a bonus, because there's no way that we're going to know what an authentic African accent sounds like. Because I kind of suggested that maybe it's a different part of Africa where their accent would be slightly different. And she says, no, that's not the case. Like, even though there are different languages in Africa, there's a certain cadence to how Africans speak English that you would recognize an African no matter which country from the continent they're from. You could tell if it's somebody who's actually an African or somebody who is trying to put on an African accent. But sometimes you just have to deal with good enough. So up next is Allison Rose from Flick Direct. She wrote, Van Damme's martial arts stunt are second to none, and back in the early 1990s, he was in tip-top shape. And that is correct. He never really disappoints in his martial arts acumen. He's just very good at his craft when it comes to making martial arts movies.
I agree.
Finally, we have Emmanuel Levi from Zaki's Corner. He wrote, a disappointing American debut of the Hong Kong cult director John Woo is a decent action vehicle by standards of its star, Jean-Claude Van Damme, but hampered by a B-movie script and flat characters. It doesn't bear Woo's artistic signature and unique vision. We had just talked about this. No need to elaborate. But yes, it's like, even though this is like, I try to arrange the critiques with both rotten and fresh critiques. So this is labeled as rotten. But even though it's kind of labeled as a rotten critique, he's not exactly wrong. so yeah, because as I haven't seen Hardboiled, but I've been told that this movie isn't as good as a lot of his Hong Kong movies. That might be because Jean-Claude Van Damme had his people edit the movie. It could be that his English was weak, so he had a hard time making himself understood to this crew and the actors on the set. I think that had a lot to do with it, but I will note that as his time in Hollywood continued, his movies improved and they got better, like Face Off, for example. So yeah, that's my take.
I can see now why Wu said that Van Damme had a pretty big ego, but he's still professional and always tries to do a good job. I can that I'm sure he really felt some other way and toned that statement way down.
Right.
That's funny.
Yeah, you got to be careful. I mean, there's one thing, you bring on a more prestigious talent. The more prestigious the talent, the more you got to be wary of how, what kind of personality do they have, right? Because it's like the purpose of bringing on prestigious talent is to get eyeballs on your movie. Like there's going to be a number of people that's going to watch a Van Damme film, is going to watch a Stallone film. It's going to be a certain audience that's gonna come automatically without even having too much of a promotion. But at the same time, they could make the project difficult to work on. So yeah, it feels like a double-edged sword.
Yeah, totally.
Well, I hope in your journey that you don't have any of these problems.
I don't either. No, I try to meditate every day so I don't run into problems like this. But yeah,
absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely. So on this last thing, Hard Target is, as of this recording, available on streaming. And that's it for today. Next week, we'll be back with a very special live streaming event in honor of the upcoming Juneteenth holiday. Join us on YouTube on Sunday, June 16th, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time with my special guest, Crystal Hicks, from her YouTube podcast, Let's Talk About This, for our discussion on a Spike Lee joint, Malcolm X. I'm excited to see that. I can't wait to talk about it. I hadn't seen it in ages. This is going to be interesting. You can follow us on Twitter, TikTok, Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at Backlick Cinema. Don't forget, you can contact us with any questions, comments, or suggestions at fanmail@backlickcinema.com. Jayson, do you have any additional plugs?
No, I just, please come out and see some of my films, see some of my merchandise, see what we got planned for the future. You can find me by Googling Strike 5 Films. Alternatively, you can do a search for me, Jayson Johnson, and Jayson is spelled Jayson Johnson. I appreciate any support that you can give us, and we will see you in the movie theaters, I'm sure, soon.
In the meantime, when you're looking for Jayson Johnson, you will find the Strike 5 Films YouTube page. Check out some of his shorts, especially check out Bloodlines. That will be of particular interest and entertaining to you. And one last time, if you like the show, then please help us grow by spreading the word about Backlit Cinema, the podcast. Believe me, it matters. And I know you enjoyed our guest, Jayson Johnson. So thank you so much, Jayson, for coming on the show. Thank you for sharing your views on Hollywood and the film business. And I hope everybody gets a chance to check out the things that you've worked on and that you get more opportunities to show what you can really do in the feature film space.
Thank you.
I've been Zoe Richardson. Be safe, share a movie from yesteryear with your family, hug your loved ones, and if you're going to be anything, be outstanding.